Welcome, boys, girls, teachers, students, one and all, to the very first Oak Park High School Talon podcast. Yes, it's finally happening. I can't believe it. Personally, I'm a huge fan of podcasts, and because of that, I decided to partner up with my associate, William Osborne, to create podcasts for the Talon, and I hope you guys enjoy it. For this first podcast, we decided to go over to Mr. Cook's class to find out more about his econ project, his senior econ project. And I wasn't super aware of this project because I'm in semester 2. All my other friends are in semester 1. But my friends keep telling me, hey, man, the econ project's super cool, man. I'm making all this money. I'm passing all these bills, man. It's a great time. And, from what I hear, it sounds like a lot of fun, like you make this money, you get A's, you got to work with people, you got to pass bills, you got to be a politician and a money manager, and it sounded super fun. So we went over to Mr. Cook's class. We recorded multiple legislation meetings, so you'll hear those interspersed throughout the project, like right here.
So it's as however much money you have in the bank, if you would have over 100%, you would get tax. But if your money's
taxed at all.
Yeah,
Yep.
Exactly.
So it's basically just capping it at 100%.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's a tax on only the A+ and above. Which in this case would be the upper tax bracket.
Hope you guys enjoyed that little segment. But yeah, so hopefully you guys will enjoy the podcast. Hopefully you guys will enjoy the podcast enough that we keep doing these podcasts, because I really enjoyed making this with William Osborne. And yeah, so you'll hear me with Mr. Cook talking about how he started the project, how basically what he would do to win, how he adjusted the project over the years, and yeah, it should be a good time. Hope you guys enjoy. Take care.
The whole reason I came up with the project in the first place was you can only learn so much from reading something out of a book or understanding the theory. Mm-hmm. The best way to learn it is to live it. So I figured out I've added layers over time. I added the new currencies this year, the foreign currencies, but I've been building kind of the project over the last 2.5 years because what I often found is late in the semester, economics gets really complicated, really difficult unless you have an experience in these things. Mm-hmm. So when we're talking about the Fed expanding the economy by putting money into the money supply, that sounds like just,
right.
over at most
Right.
people's heads until they actually lived it for 4 months before we even got to talk about it. So oftentimes the way I've built the project is if it can happen in real life, it can happen in class. And that means just about anything. And I've seen many different outcomes on this project. I've seen classes become completely socialistic, which I've made the number at 89% for the entire class. If the class chooses to basically share their wealth, it's still pretty good. It's 89%, but it's not an A. So, that little leeway for A oftentimes comes at the expense of the people who are maybe in the C range. And that replicates what a capitalistic economy can look like. We're going to sell bonds. We're going to sell securities. We're going to invest in the stock market. If they don't legislate against something being illegal, it's legal. If we open a sports book in the corner during football season and our class hasn't legislated against it, our government has chosen in that class period to let that be okay. So what I want the students to do is build a government structure and an economic system from scratch. And I want it to be complicated. And I want it to be confusing. And I want it to be competitive. And I want people to be very creative and think of all kinds of crazy things. And I've seen this project go a million different ways. It's never the same thing twice, ever.
And it sounds very complicated. Especially for you, because you have to manage all these different
If I was a first-year teacher, it would be hard to learn how to teach and implement this project at the same time. But now I've been teaching for 11 years. I've got the teaching part down. Now I'm just adding layers to
What I'm saying is what I've seen, and I will say there are some outliers. There are some people who vote here who are aligned with the people with majority of the people who vote here, and vice versa. But what I'm saying is, I am a very observant person. And I have noticed from that corner a lot of people, as they're raising their hands, looking around at other people. And I've noticed at least 2 different people start raising their hands, look around, and then lower them again. So if those two people are doing that, if those two people were so adamant to start raising their hand but decided to put it down, then I believe peer pressure is playing a large role. I'll get to you in a second, but I want to hit over here. Yes.
Yep.
How about, like someone said over there, like it doesn't matter, like peer pressure doesn't matter, it's who's proposing it. If they don't, like, it's about the person proposing it, basically. So how about we sweeten the deal with anonymous referenda?
I would actually.
Okay.
I
So
would
that
like
means you would email it to me, and I would read the legislation aloud before we voted on it with no name, title attached to the origin.
That's a good idea.
So, you mentioned you worked on this project for a long time. Can you talk about like the inception of this project a little bit more?
Sure.
Like where did
So,
you get it from? You know?
I taught at Oak Park High School from 2007 to 2011, and while I was here, I did teach economics, and I did find at times it was hard to make parts of it engaging. It can be a dry subject at times, and I
Right.
wanted to combat that, and I found that as a challenge. And then I moved to Colorado, and I didn't teach economics at all. And then when I moved back to California, I started teaching economics again, and I tried to learn from my first 4 years at Oak Park High School and think about a clever way to make it creative. And it started off with the currency for participation, and I did a test run with a 0-period class 2 years ago at Oak Park High School. I learned a few things from that. I learned what worked. I learned what didn't. I made new layers to it. And what I have now is I'm the Federal Reserve, which is an independent body of the federal government. Every class is its own country with its own federal government. And we are starting in a state of anarchy. I'm giving money away under no circumstances. And every once in a while, if I see my class is not ready to legislate, I'll do it inequitably. So they get upset and they get frustrated. So they know that they need to put in a piece of legislation
Right.
or a law intentionally in order to combat something like that. So I can usually manipulate or pull strings. It doesn't always work. Sometimes one half of the class simply does not care, even
Yeah.
if the other half of the class gets most of the money.
Yeah.
So I've seen countries become democratically socialist. I've seen countries become communistically socialist. I've seen traditional economies break out. I've seen different forms. I've seen a hybrid parliament executive branch system develop. It's all different every single time. And it makes it just as much entertaining for me as it does to watch the students go through.
Okay. So this is kind of an unpopular, I guess, like a other question, but like, so with the whole like putting your head down thing, I think that bias is actually a good thing. Okay? Because like,
All right.
it makes the people have to pitch it that much better. So they have to be more thought out, more researched.
True. And I think your bias would be a good thing if it was a 50-50 vote. But the fact that it's a two-thirds of the class vote makes it extremely hard for anything to pass. Case in point, look at that wall. Look at legislation period 4. There is nothing on that board.
Do we have a gap?
So, is this the first of its kind that you know of? Like the first time like that someone's doing like this whole like.
I don't know what
legislation?
anybody else is doing in the country, but I definitely invented this version of this project myself in 2 summers.
That's pretty crazy.
A couple summers it took, yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of just sitting around and thinking about it and going, okay, if I made this rule and I was in the class, how would I manipulate that rule and how do I fix that problem?
Yeah.
And a lot of that is me trying to find my own loopholes so that students don't find the loopholes when I introduce something.
So, just one more question.
Sure.
You probably can't talk about this, but you know,
I
I'm still
never
gonna
know,
ask it. How would you make money if you did this project?
So if I was sitting on the other end,
Yeah.
do keep in mind I have an economics degree.
Yeah.
Do keep in mind I've worked in that field for
And
a
you
little
probably
while.
can't talk about it just because, you know.
I can. In
students
fact,
are
I
listening.
can because
Okay.
we're doing the podcast.
Yeah.
But so the exchange rates for the class are your clean exchange rates. But what is not considered is what the scarcity of that currency is. So if I were to do this project, I would try and hoard another country's currency.
You would do what the NYU did, guy. Yeah.
Exactly. Because then what I could do is I can drive up the exchange rate, and simply by having a foreign currency in stockpile, I can then drive up the exchange rate
The
for
price,
it.
yeah.
And therefore I'm benefiting just by having close to a monopoly. There's no way I'm going to have 100% of the bills, but if I had 75% of the bills, it's still a problem for most of the people that need
Big
that
problem.
currency for that country. So I would start by being a broker. And we've seen in about 3 classes, and you can see the advertisings on the board here.
Yeah.
If I was in a class, I'd start by being a broker, which means I'll give you a clean exchange rate. Just come to me, and I'll have all 5 currencies, and I'll exchange any way you want. And then over the course of the semester, I would start to hoard one of those currencies as the broker, and then I would drive up the value of that currency by making it scarce. Now, let's say somebody recognized me doing that and wanted to combat that, then I'd have to figure out a clever thing to offer as a service or a product in the marketplace and just try and make as much money that way.
Right. So how would people stop you, like in legislation? Would people just like, because obviously people can't like go against an individual, so how do you think people would
What they
stop
can do
you?
is they can place a tax on
certain-
excess currency.
Yeah.
You know, so let's say they identify the fact that I've got 100 of the Indian rupee bills.
Mhm.
They could say anybody who has more than 50 rupee bills will be taxed at 100% over that 50 amount.
Okay.
And if 2/3 of that country passes that, that's law.
Mhm.
So it's a delegate game. What I often see is sometimes 2 or 3 people jump out to this big lead and they think they're riding high, but what they don't realize is they're doing great in the economic simulation, but the government simulation that
Political, yeah.
corresponds with it is going to have 2/3 of the class overthrow what those 3 individuals are doing, which is very positive economically, but they're making enemies politically. Let's vote on the heads down, heads up thing.
Heads down, heads up. With the punishment being that if you are caught looking up, your vote does not count. All right. Let's vote for that.
2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 22, 4, 6, 8, 32, 4, 5. We've got 35 people here, which means we need what? 24? Means we need 24 to pass this resolution. So, all in favor of conducting anonymous votes with your head down, heads up, 7 up, stop. Keep your hands up. We got a law! Wait, my constitution.
I mean, this whole project sounds insane. I can't wait to do it. Second semester. Do you have any closing thoughts that you want to, put out there for the people?
Closing thoughts? I don't know. I can't wait to have you guys all in econ.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to figure out a couple more layers to add, even by the
Man.
time we get to second
So you're
semester.
still going to keep on building and building.
Oh, this
like,
will be a
years to
living
come.
project
Yeah.
for the rest of my days teaching econ, and I will only look to improve it from each semester.
That's crazy.
And it's going to be a heck of a lot. Well, my idea is to make it a living board game for 4 months of everybody's high school career.
Well, thank you very much.
Of
Yeah,
course,
for sure.
yeah. Anytime you guys need anything, let me know.